Good afternoon, everyone. Just wait a minute here before we get started. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for today's webinar, where we will be discussing back to basics and understanding your roof system. For those who may not know us, we are Detail Roofing. We specialize in preventative maintenance and repairs throughout Southern Ontario and the lower mainland of BC. My name is Andrew Tate. I'm an account manager here with Detail Roofing, as well as today's moderator. Joining me today will be Kelly McDonald, our client engagement and event coordinator, who will be leading you through today's presentation. And to answer all of your questions, we have Michelle Wallace, our business development manager. So just a few housekeeping items before we get started. This session will be recorded, and a copy of the recording will be made available and emailed out early next week. As I'm sure mostly everyone on today saw, today's session is valid for 1 CPE credit. Please note that to obtain the credit, you must be present for the duration of this live session. Viewing the recording of the presentation afterwards will not be eligible for credits. This activity will be available on the CMRAO portal by tomorrow. And if anyone needs guidance on how to report their attendance, a link has been added to the chat. Throughout this presentation, please use the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen to submit questions at any time. We will address as many as possible in the time allotted. Any questions we do not get around to will be emailed with the recording. Finally, we do want to hear from you throughout the presentation, so we have a few polls that will pop up periodically. Before we jump in, let's start with our first poll now. What type of building do you manage? Oh, a lot of high rises right off the hop. Mix, that's good. Townhomes, very good. Okay, a few commercials. Excellent. All right, so I'm just going to share the results of that poll with everyone. So as you see, obviously a majority of participants today are high-rise managers as well as townhomes. So welcome everybody, and I'm happy to turn it over to Kelly McDonald.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrew. As Andrew mentioned, my name is Kelly McDonald, so I'll be leading us through the presentation today. It's nice that we have a solid mix of managers that have different types of properties. What we're going to be looking at today includes the different roof systems and membrane types that we see within Southern Ontario, and that does include roof systems that we see on both townhomes, high-rises, commercial roofs. There's a pretty solid mix throughout. From there, we're going to be talking about considerations for all roof repairs or roof installations, as well as looking at identifying some common installation errors that we see. Towards the end, we're going to briefly take a look at signs of an aging roof system and how to maximize the lifespan of your roof system. As Andrew mentioned, we encourage you to ask questions throughout as anything's coming up that we will address at the end of the presentation. And also during the registration, there was also the section for comments and questions. So anything that was submitted as a question ahead of time, we will be addressing throughout the presentation as well. So to get things started, before we really dive in, we're going to start very, very basic with the purpose of the roof. It's no surprise that the purpose of the roof primarily is to, of course, protect the building and its contents from any of the elements. Especially where we live, we experience all seasons and all weather that comes along with that. So we want to make sure that no matter what type of building or what type of roof system we have, it's going to be able to withstand all the harsh weather conditions and keep all the outside elements outside. Another purpose of the roof is to shed water from the roof surfaces, again, so that water isn't getting into the building and so that water isn't sitting and pooling on roof surfaces. And then finally, the primary purpose of the roof system would also be to provide thermal insulation to the building interiors.
Sorry, Kelly, just before you continue, Were you able to share that link for purpose of getting credit for CPO?
Yes, sorry, I will pop that in towards the end of the presentation after I stop sharing my screen.
Thanks.
But we will have that added to the chat so people have a direct link just in case you don't have the steps on how to report that through the portal. So just before looking at the different membrane types and roof systems that we commonly see, one thing to keep in mind is that what we see most often with the roof types here in Ontario is primarily based on the climate. So the roof systems that we see most often have to be able to withstand all the various weather that we experience through the various seasons that we have here in a continental climate. So that's why primarily the roof systems that we're seeing are either asphalt or rubber based, as opposed to some other climates, like in a tropical climate, you might see more concrete throughout roof surfaces, more clay, more slate tiles, whereas we see less of those here. And then just very quickly, of course, with the different roof types that we have both flat and sloped roofs. With flat roofs, you might sometimes hear them referred to as low slope roofs. And that's just because no roof is truly flat. As we mentioned, one of the purposes of the roof system is to shed water from roof surfaces. So even with flat roofs, there will be at least a slight slope to allow water to run to the various drains. There are situations where sometimes the slope that's in place may not be sufficient. So when you're having a new roof installed or you're having a roof replaced, with flat roof options, there are sloped installation packages just to provide more of a slope, especially if it's a case where you've experienced some pretty severe ponding water issues. So most commonly with flat roofs, you tend to have your roof deck, your vapor barrier, insulation, protection board, and then your waterproofing membrane. With a sloped roof, typically you would have your roof deck, ice and water shield, or another underlayment, followed by shingles, as that's the most common. So before we dive into all the different roof types, we want to hear from you again. So Andy is going to pull up another poll for us here.
Yes, so for poll number 2, I will launch. Do you know what type of roof/waterproofing membrane is on your buildings? So there are multiple choices. Very good. A lot of people are hiding on their roofs, going to see the roofs. Excellent. All right. Well, I'm going to share these results with everybody. And thank you for answering. And there you go. 78% of everyone knows what type of roof they have.
Yeah, so for the people that either do not know what type of roof system they have or that are unsure, hopefully by these next few slides, you might be able to identify what type of roof you have by seeing the similar look or just getting some more information. So first, when it comes to sloped roofs, of course, no surprise here, the primary roof would be asphalt shingles. So the main type of shingles that we see are either 3-tab or architectural. An important note about these two different types of shingles is that the 3-tab shingles have been discontinued in Ontario and most other places throughout North America. It is a shingle style that has been phased out and now replaced by the architectural shingles. That means that it is very hard to come by. Roofing suppliers haven't had these in stock for at least a year or two now. So typically anybody that does have these 3-tab shingles, it's just kind of leftover stock from years prior. It's just important to consider. So if you do have a roof that has the 3-tab shingles and there are any localized damages, you can't go out and get those shingles anymore. So there is a possibility that architectural shingles will have to be installed for localized repairs. Or in a lot more cases, we're seeing situations where, again, if people are just using what they already have, there might not be a direct color match. With the 3-tab shingles, again, they were just phased out recently, so we still do see them on a lot of sloped roof surfaces throughout Ontario. One of the things about them specifically is that they're not as durable as the new architectural shingles, and especially in areas that experienced high winds or when we had these extreme wind storms, they were very prone to wind damages because it was easy to kind of sweep under them and lift up. And just for a closer look at what these 3-tab and architectural shingles look like, you can see we have the 3-tab on the left, more of a rectangular linear look to them, whereas the architectural looks like it has a bit more of a design to it. And again, they are just more durable in nature. So next, the beginning of this slide said most common in Ontario. These ones are actually not as common, but we do want to touch on them because it is something that we see from time to time. And that would be specialty shingles, including slate tiles, clay tiles, or cedar shingles. Cedar shingles is probably what we see most often out of the 3 types there. However, in cases where we do see them, it's typically on mansards or at the side of the building. One thing to note about cedar shingles is, like many other roofing products, over the years, the actual makeup of the product has changed. So new growth cedar shingles are not the same as ones that were around 20, 30 years ago and aren't going to last as long or be as durable as older ones. Again, with the slate and the clay tiles, we don't see that very often, again, considering the climate that we live in. However, when we do see them, it is important to note that it can at times be hard if you do have localized shingle damages, just because these products aren't as widely available as, say, architectural asphalt shingles. So metal roofing is one of those unique ones that can be both utilized for flat and sloped roof surfaces. Metal roofs are arguably one of the longest lasting, best roof systems. However, with that, they do typically come along with the highest price tag, both for the material and for the installation costs. So for a number of reasons, we don't typically see them on a lot of condos, and if we do, it's not throughout the entire roof surfaces. As we can see here, it might be on a lower canopy, a pool roof, or other small roof areas throughout the building. One of the nice things about metal roofing, other than the long lifespan, is that also over the course of the lifespan of the metal roof, there is more minimal maintenance required than some of the other roof systems. Okay, so next up, when it comes to flat roofing, this is one of the oldest and for a long time the most popular roof system. That would be a built-up roof. Some other names that you might see would be just the shortened form: burr, tar and gravel, 4-ply. Typically, if you're hearing these terms, they're talking about a built-up roof. So again, this for over 100 years was the primary flat roofing system. It was a very great durable system with a lot of redundancy. However, over time, and again, because of changes in the chemical compounds, it's not as durable as it once was and isn't seen as regularly as some of the other roof systems. In this particular case, you have multiple layers of hot asphalt and reinforcing felt, also sometimes referred to as the ply sheet. And then on top of the membrane system, you would have very small pea gravel. So in the bottom here, this is just an example of when that pea gravel is swept back or spudded, so you can see the membrane layer below. This membrane system also, again, because typically when we're running into it, it is on an older building and it is an older system that's reaching the end of its life. This system is typically prone to splits and cracks during the winter months when extreme temperature fluctuations are causing expansion and contraction in the membrane. So the system that has kind of taken over and is often considered a relative of the built-up roofing system is modified bitumen. So this is also an asphalt-based roofing membrane. The two types that we see are SBS or APP. Probably the one that we see more often on condos within Ontario would be the 2-ply SBS. So again, it is a rubberized asphalt membrane, also very durable and flexible, which is great, especially in those winter months. And similar to the common roof anatomy that we spoke about earlier, it has the insulation underlay board, base sheet, and then a granulated cap sheet. So the top layer of the roof system would be very similar to the top of a shingle with those loose granules on as well. So these ones are kind of grouped together, the single ply membranes, and we'll take a quick look at what the three main types of single ply membranes are. But we just wanted to speak about them together because there are quite a few similarities between them. So some of the appeals of a single ply membrane system is the fact that typically it has one of the lower upfront installation costs. They can also really be great for large facilities, especially the lighter color membranes, because they can be incredibly energy efficient for the building. It's also flexible materials that are very helpful, again, for any natural building movement. We do typically see these more often on commercial spaces or industrial spaces as opposed to residential buildings. And in our opinion and in our experience, a lot of the times when we're encountering single ply membranes on residential condos, there are many leaks that come along with them because of the fact that it can be easily punctured, especially in cases where we've seen a lot of cases where the single ply membrane is on a lower canopy or a lower roof area. And if residents are throwing things down from their balcony, any sharp objects, cigarette butts especially, that can cause punctures in the membrane, even on upper roof surfaces like we have in some of these cases here. If there are any animals or pests, they can easily puncture the membrane as well. Also, any areas that are experiencing heavy foot traffic or any areas that are above a residential area, not the most ideal. Areas that do experience a lot of foot traffic, there are some options to help protect the membrane. Like we can see in this photo here, there's a TPO walkway installed. So this is adhered to the membrane and is compatible with the membrane, so it would stay adhered, but it just creates a protected surface that can be walked on without the threat of causing damage to the membrane. We also often see paving stones installed as a walkway to various roof areas. However, it's important to note that if you're putting paving stones down on a single ply roof system, it is imperative that there's insulation underneath to, again, protect the membrane. So the first of the single ply membranes would be EPDM. This is also, sometimes you might hear people talking about a rubber roof. That would be EPDM that they're speaking about. So arguably one of the most durable of the single ply membranes. There's also a variety of ways that it can be installed. It can be self-adhered, mechanically fastened, or ballasted. Of the three single ply systems, this is probably the one that we see ballasted most often. So that would be having the river rock gravel ballast on top of the membrane. In cases like that, it can be a bit of a struggle if leaks are occurring because tracing out the leaks and having to expose various areas, especially on a membrane that can be easily punctured, can provide some difficulty.
Hey, sorry, Kelly, before you continue with the TPO, we do have a pre-submitted question in regards to EPDM. I have a customer who said, is it more susceptible for birds to peck at EPDM to get under into the insulation for nesting, as opposed to any other roof? I'm assuming it's a non-ballasted EPDM roof. Sorry.
I can definitely take that question, Andy.
Sure.
It's birds tend to peck at the EPDM roof to get at the insulation, not necessarily for nesting, but they do for whatever reason like the insulation below. So it is a common problem that we find that happens with holes on EPDM roofs.
Thanks, Michelle.
Okay, so next up we have TPO, another single ply membrane. This is probably one of the most popular common types that we see not only in Ontario but throughout North America. Again, typically see this more often in commercial or industrial spaces. One of the nice things about TPO is that for the installation, part of the process is heat welding the seams, which can just add some added durability to the overall roof system. And then similar to a TPO, but an older system and somewhat different as far as the chemical makeup goes, would be PVC or a vinyl membrane. So this is the oldest of the single ply membranes. And indirectly, we get asked about this a lot because we find that a lot of people want to know more about Duradec. So Duradec is a brand of a vinyl membrane. It is something that we see from time to time, both on commercial spaces or not really on commercial spaces, but on unit balconies. Again, it's something that in our experience, we're dealing with a lot of leaks with single ply membranes and punctures that happen quite easily. So it's not something that we would recommend necessarily over a residential space. One of the upsides to PVC over something like TPO is that it does offer more chemical resistance. So we do see it a lot more often on industrial spaces.
Kelly, I've got a couple questions before we carry on. We have a question in regards to what maintenance would be needed for a TPO roof, Michelle?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely can answer that. Similar to a lot of other roof systems, you want to make sure that all of the penetrations are sealed, the flashings are secure, dealing with any rusting from any of the flashings, and ensuring that your drains are clear. And then on top of that, we would always say that there's usually a few puncture holes and stuff throughout the roof. So doing some spot repairs each year and maybe the reinforcement of some of the seams. But TPO roofs, for sure, it is really important to do more regular inspections because of the membrane concerns of punctures.
Okay, and staying on that topic, can you apply an EPDM or TPO membrane in the winter?
Yes, it just depends on the temperature. There are temperature requirements by the manufacturer guidelines. So you just have to work within them and monitor the weather. But as we all know, in Ontario, winter goes up and down every day. So it's just a matter of monitoring the temperatures.
And finally, wouldn't PVC crack, especially with long-term exposure of sun and heat?
PVC specifically in TPO, I mean, that question I think is long-term cracking. I can report back to everybody when we speak with our technicians. The concerns that we find most is that it's the punctures and the holes that we have the most problems with.
Thanks, Michelle.
Okay, so at the beginning, an overwhelming amount of people said that they manage high-rise condos. So there is a high likelihood that on your high-rise condo, you have a hot rubber asphalt membrane. The thing is, you might not immediately recognize this membrane if you haven't seen it exposed before or seen photos of it, because this type of membrane does require a protected roof system to go along with it, since it is not UV resistant. So if you had this roof system without the protection of a roof system, it's just not going to last as long as it's meant to. This again is a liquid blend of asphalt and modified rubber. So it's poured and then hardened. Because of the application process and lower upfront cost, it is very desirable, especially for condos, because it's good for or ideal for covering large surface areas. So speaking
Kelly,
of,
I think, sorry, Kelly, I just want to say for that, the hot rubber roof is a good example of cracking under the UV rays. That's why it's really important to make sure that none of your roof system is left exposed. That system, if left open to the UV rays, it would crack.
So one of the options for a protected roof system, whether it's a hot rubber roof or otherwise, would be the inverted roof system, also known as the upside down roof system. So everybody out there with high-rise condos, this is likely what you have on your roof surface or something that you've seen before. It's very common here to have the inverted roof system in Southern Ontario. So in this case, part of the reason why it's called an upside down roof is because of the fact that it's going a bit opposite of that standard flat roof anatomy that we saw earlier. So in this case, over the roof deck, you would have your waterproofing membrane layer, and then your insulation on top of that, covered by filter cloth. And then in most cases, river rock gravel ballast, but then depending on the roof area, we also see paving stones in place of gravel ballast as well. So this can offer really great protection and allow your roof system to have a longer service life. However, it does complicate things when there are leaks occurring because of the fact that the membrane isn't visible. So just seeing the condition of the membrane or investigating a leak and trying to trace it out, you do have to remove the various layers of the roof system like we see here. So hypothetically, if there was a situation where you exposed this area, but there weren't any defects or you needed to expand out further, then you need to just continue to open different areas of the roof system and then again put that all back so that it's not left exposed to the UV rays, which can cause significant membrane damages. So somewhat similar in theory to the inverted roof system would be a green roof system. So again, very similar concept where it is a protected roof system and you have your insulation above your waterproofing layer. However, because of the nature of the greenery on the roof, there are some additional layers between the greenery and the roof deck for drainage and added protection. Similar to the inverted roof system, it does create issues if there's a leak occurring because in this case, the membrane is even more inaccessible. If you were to access the membrane, whether for general inspection or if you're investigating and tracing out a leak, in most cases, you need to fully excavate the green surface and then remove the various layers of the roof system. So it can be very invasive and very time consuming. So that's why it's very important if you're having a new green roof installed to ensure that the membrane layer is something that's going to be strong, durable, and installed properly so that it can last as long as possible without issues occurring over its lifespan.
Kelly, I do have a pre-submitted question as well, and Michelle, we tend to get this question quite often, is what are the preventative maintenance requirements for a healthy green roof?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. There's actually two sides to that answer. So the first side would be maintaining the actual roof system, which the green roof is just like an inverted roof system. So it has all the similar components. So the most important things of that is making sure your penetrations are sealed and your drains are clear. Now, the other side of that is maintaining the landscaping on there, which you would use a landscaping company to if the greenery does grow. So you just need to maintain the greenery, somebody that understands how to maintain greens. And then they also have the roof system component. So two different specialties required.
Perfect. And Michelle, I've got a couple other questions submitted. Can we change the present roof into a green roof system? Will there be an issue for a load in the roof?
It depends on what type of roof system you currently have. I think you would have to consult an engineer. You would have to get a roof load evaluation done by an engineer. It's just really going to depend whether you have an inverted roof or you have another type of roof and what's below it and what you're trying to put on as far as how big the green roof is.
Perfect. And Michelle, how viable is the type of roof given the droughts we have had?
How viable is it?
Viable is the green roof.
The green roof. Okay. Yeah. It depends again on the greenery that is put up there. A lot of the greenery that's up there isn't really meant to grow or to have a lot of maintenance done on it. So often it doesn't look very pretty, unfortunately. But the concept of green roofs are great. It's just depends on how much of aesthetics you want it to look like and how much maintenance is required.
And would something like that add to the corporation's water bill? Would it up the water bill usage?
If the greenery that's on there requires regular watering to sustain itself, yes, it probably would. So it just depends on the type of vegetation that it's installed.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you, Michelle, for answering those. While I do have everyone's attention, I am going to launch another poll. So bear with me here. So poll number 3. Very important question. What is the most important factor when completing a roofing project? Specifications, very good. We like seeing that. Visual appeal, great. And cost, of course. All right. And that, I'm going to share the results with everyone. Thank you for answering, everyone. And really positive to see that following manufacturer specifications is quite the popular answer. So thanks, everyone.
Okay, yeah, so that brings us into our next section, which is considerations when completing a roofing project. And as Andrew mentioned, it is great to see the overwhelming response of following manufacturer guidelines, because of course we understand the importance of cost when completing a roofing project, and visual appeal can be important to some corporations as well. But ultimately, if the contractor is not following manufacturer guidelines and specifications, there's a lot of cases where the lowest cost option isn't always the best option if they're not following the guidelines. If guidelines are not followed, that's where you have various installation issues that can lead to leaks, in some cases immediately following the installation. So again, because there's so many different roofing types out there, and then within the different types of roof systems, you have different manufacturers, you have different application methods, and various roofing products. It's very, very important to make sure that the installing contractor knows what it is, the product that they're working with, and is following the guidelines. Just choosing a roofing contractor based on the fact that they have been roofing for 20, 30 years, you want to also make sure that they're familiar with the various systems, because if, for example, over that time they've only been working with built-up roof systems, or they've only been doing single-ply systems, if they're not well-versed in other things and familiar with the manufacturer guidelines, they might not be the best person to carry out your particular roofing project. So just a high-level overview about some of the documentation and resources that are provided by the manufacturer to roofing contractors. So first and foremost, there are installation requirements that come with the exact specifications, but also have general best practices as well. There are details about surface preparation requirements, product compatibility, material handling and storage, as well as weather and temperature requirements. As Michelle was mentioning earlier, with specific products in winter especially, there are a lot of products that are made to be winter grade, and then there are others that, whether they're summer or winter grade, are going to have exactly on there the minimum and maximum temperature requirements for installation. So where we start to see issues is if any of these things aren't being followed. And then what we want to look at now is what some of those common installation errors are. So one of the systems that we see errors with most regularly is definitely the modified bitumen or the 2-ply SBS. So just looking at this little diagram here and just kind of a quick overview about some of the basics of the installation. So for starters, the flat surface here is considered the field, and then any upturns like on exterior walls or curbs, that would be considered the stripping or flashing. So you have membrane installed separately to both of those areas. However, it is important to note that there is a bit of an overlap here with the stripping and the field membrane. So the stripping membrane is going to come out into the field at least 6 inches, which is really great because that actually adds added durability and redundancy in these more vulnerable areas where the building has an upturn. Another important thing to consider with this type of membrane installation is that the stripping and the field membrane the seams from the end of the membrane shouldn't be in line. There should be a stagger between them so that if water is coming in, it's not going to travel down the membrane, hypothetically. So just looking at that with an actual membrane installation, again, you can see both with the base sheet and the cap sheet along the field and the stripping, you have staggered. It's a continuous run of membrane, not cut into several pieces and kind of just puzzled all over the place. And yeah, coming out into the field surface 6 inches for both the base sheet and the cap sheet installation. So again, when these guidelines aren't being followed in these specifications, that's where we start to run into issues. Some of the installation issues can be very easy to spot. So for example, here, honestly, this is one of the craziest things I've ever seen. I really don't know what they were thinking in this case. Over the curb, it looks like they just kind of slapped the membrane down, didn't even try to make it look nice or fasten it in any way here. So it is an area where water can get under here. In other cases, if corners are cut or if compatible products aren't being used, if guidelines aren't being followed, you might have cases where there's issues with adhesion and things are opening up like we have here. In other cases, it might be a little more difficult to identify if there is an issue with the installation. If you look here, you can see that there's just a lot of little patches throughout. It's installed horizontally instead of vertically along the stripping. The runs aren't staggered here. So there are a number of issues, and this is why it's also important if you're having a new installation or a replacement completed or any sort of major capital roofing project, it's very important to have a third party oversee this project. So whether it's a roofing engineer or somebody that specializes in roof inspections for new installation, definitely have that third-party oversight so that you can ensure manufacturer guidelines are being adhered to. So another thing that we see very commonly when the guidelines aren't followed are issues with adhesion. So this can be both with localized repairs or new installations. And this could be either because of the installation method. So for example, if it was a torch-on application, if they're not torching adequately or to the specifications, there could be issues with the adhesion because of the bleed of the tar on the underside. Also, if it is a cold applied or self-adhered membrane, if the guidelines aren't being followed about materials that are being used for compatibility, or if it's not within the temperature requirements, then again, you can have issues with the membrane adhering to the roof surface. The stripping membrane is where we tend to see a lot of issues with the modified bitumen membrane. And I think a big part of that reason is because with any upturns, whether it's at the wall or curbs or otherwise, a lot more care and a lot more detail is required to do these areas properly. And with more care and more detail, of course, comes more time. So in a lot of cases, it really looks like people are just kind of rushing through the installation process at the expense of having a solid, durable roof system. So one of the things that we see from time to time is, again, the stripping membrane not going up and over and not being adhered properly. In this particular case, it was a little alarming because of the fact that there was metal cap flashing installed over top of this. So if you were just coming out and looking at the roof surface, you wouldn't be able to immediately identify that this area of the stripping wasn't installed properly and that it's wide open at the top. In this case, again, it looks fairly clean and fairly nice installation. However, it isn't to the manufacturer specifications. There's also a termination bar installed here, but it's on the underside of the membrane and isn't fastened to the membrane that's coming over to the top, and therefore isn't really serving much of a purpose. So next up, some of the issues that we see with shingle installation. As we were talking about earlier, because of 3-tab shingles being phased out, being very hard to come by, we are seeing more and more situations where any color of shingles are being installed, as long as it's covering the area. Realistically, if the colors don't match, it's generally a cosmetic issue. However, they also have to make sure that they are installing the shingles correctly. So in this case here, once again with the 3-tab shingles, you want to have a stagger in the seams on the end. So with these being installed just in line like this, that would be considered an installation issue. This one here, another very bizarre thing. It's not something that we come across a lot, but from time to time, it just makes you scratch your head and say, what were they thinking in this case? In this case, they just slapped a single shingle over an opening where there once was a vent. So not only is it poor workmanship, it's also a massive waterproofing issue because there was just a hole underneath this shingle here. Something that may be less noticeable, but it is a very big issue, is that when there are exposed nail heads. So when it comes to shingles, they're probably one of the easiest and most straightforward to install. Not only is it less materials to work with and a more straightforward installation guide, but each bundle of shingles, no matter who the manufacturer is, actually has step-by-step instructions on the bundle of shingles. And when you're actually when you lift the tab of the shingles up, there's a line underneath that shows you exactly where you need to line them up, where you need to put your nails in. So having the nails on the top part of the shingles here can be quite an issue, because if these start to lift or if they start to rust over time, that's just a hole straight into your attic where water can get in. So you want to make sure that when new shingles are installed, the nails are always on the underside of the shingle and not exposed where it can present a waterproofing issue. So one of the final things we want to touch on is roof flashing. So roof flashing is very important because it protects critical or vulnerable areas of the roof surface, mostly at penetrations or curbs or upturns. At penetrations, especially where areas are cored into the roof deck for things like plumbing, HVAC, electrical, you want to make sure that you have something in place there that's going to divert water away from that opening and make sure water is staying out of the building. Most commonly with roof flashing, we see galvanized steel. However, depending on the roof system, you could also see plastic or rubber roof flashing. If there are any issues with the installation, it can lead to a number of issues, most likely leaks. So one of the things that we see very often is when the roof flashing is not adequately sized, and typically it's too big for what's being flashed. So in all of these cases here, you can see that there's pretty significant gaps between the vent or the plumbing stack and the actual flashing. In a case like this, you can tell that it was very close and they just tried to fasten it in and seal it up. However, just close isn't good enough. There are a wide variety of sizes of roof flashing out there with custom options available. So no matter what the size of the penetration that's in place, there is always roof flashing that will fit without there being any gaps present. For added protection, there's also the option of a storm collar, just to again help divert water away from the top of the flashing. However, even in this case where the storm collar is in place, it doesn't extend past where the flashing is too large. So in all of these cases, they were creating leak issues. Another thing we see is that when the base of the flashing is not roofed in, meaning that it's sitting on top of the membrane as opposed to having the membrane over top of it, just to create that seal where there's a penetration or a hole cored into the roof surface. So in this particular situation, again, quite alarming because it's on an inverted roof system. So after this was installed, the roof system was put back in place. So if anybody was walking the roof surface, it's not obvious that this is sitting there, not roofed in and susceptible to interior leaks. So making sure that these things are being roofed in, and also if you're having any roof work done, whether you're having somebody inspect it immediately following or getting photo documentation of what's being completed so that you can ensure that things like this aren't happening. So speaking of the manufacturer guidelines and compatibility, we also see compatibility issues with the types of flashing that's being installed. So if there's incompatibility with the flashing, then it can create various issues. So in this particular case, this type of flashing is meant for a single ply roof system, whereas we have the modified bitumen membrane, which is asphalt based. So because of that, there were eventually issues with adhesion, and this roof flashing isn't serving a purpose because it's lifting up, allowing water to get in. In this lower instance here, it looked like they were trying to do a storm collar, but instead they took another type of roof flashing, but again meant for a single ply roof, and put it on this tall cone flashing to be used as a storm collar of sorts. And then
Sorry,
this,
Kelly, just before you continue, I do have a question for Michelle. Very good question, and something we do have to answer quite often. So the question is, what training process your on-site team members go through before they're allowed to go onto a job site?
Quite a bit, actually. It's we have our own internal program that's called Top Gun training that we do for internal staff. That it's a minimum of 120 hours of training. Also, they have to go through Working at Heights certification, which is done through the ministry. Then there's also various other training depending on what equipment they're using, whether they're using a boom, they require boom certification. If they're using certain manufacturer materials, there's manufacturer training that has to be gone through in order to, for example, do torching or anything like that to follow manufacturer guidelines. So there's an extensive process of training, and then not to mention all of the safety they have to do just to set up when they get on site. They have pages and pages and pages of safety paperwork that they have to fill out once they get on site.
Great, thank you, Michelle.
Okay, so again, with the incompatibility, a situation, this particular case is something that we came across, again, another head scratcher, not something that we see super often, but it is something that can become an issue because of the lack of compatibility. So as it says on the slide here, with different roofing materials, they are made up of different chemical compounds. So if they're not working together, then you can have adhesion issues. So in this particular case, even though the installation here looks quite nice, it looks clean. However, you have a TPO plastic roof with modified bitumen asphalt-based membrane installed. So again, it might not be immediate, but over time there will be issues with the adhesion of this membrane, which can eventually lead to leak issues. So next we're going to go into signs of an aging roof system. So one of the things that we're going to start off here with is shingles. There are a variety of ways to see if there are signs of shingle deterioration and signs that the roof is nearing the end of its life or has reached the end of its life. Again, age is going to be a big factor when it comes to the time to replace your roof. However, some of the signs that it is nearing the end of its life do include recurring or missing shingles, especially in the case if it is a 3-tab roof, major discoloration or loss of granules. Again, if it's major and widespread throughout the roof surfaces, any brittleness or cracking of the shingles, curling of the shingles at the side, like you can see in a really extreme case here, in a case where it's just kind of starting at the edges here. And then any heavy organic growth. So again, depending on the climate, there are some areas where organic growth may happen. However, if it is widespread in an area where there's not commonly organic growth, that could be a sign of the roof system aging. So another thing we see, as the name suggests here, alligator cracking is a membrane defect that resembles an alligator's skin. This is something that can happen with asphalt in general, not even just with roofing. It is something that you can see in asphalt pavement as well. So because it can happen in all these different roof systems, we can see it in the built-up roof system, modified bitumen, as well as hot rubber. Again, with this happening, if it's a localized issue, it's something that can be dealt with. If it's widespread, that could be something that may be more alarming and may determine how soon you would need to replace your roof. So because of buildings' natural movement, we do tend to see issues with the stripping membrane or the upturns of the building before seeing anything in the field surface. So once you start to see, especially major signs of deterioration in the stripping membrane, even if it hasn't occurred in the field yet, it could be a sign that the roof needs to be replaced, or at least start putting a plan in place for the replacement of the roof. Especially in the case of an inverted roof system where it's protected and you can't see the membrane. There are some times where the stripping membrane may be visible. So there are cases where it may be feasible to do the installation of the stripping membrane first if it is more deteriorated than the field, if the field has a longer lifespan. So again, something that's more specific to an inverted or protected roof system would be cases where the membrane is bonding to the insulation. Typically, if it's bonding to the insulation, that means that it's not going to be bonded well to the concrete. And in a lot of these cases, when the insulation is being lifted up, if it is bonded to the membrane, like we can see here, it is very susceptible to be able to pull up the membrane off and leave the concrete exposed, which of course is not good. It can create a ton of leak issues. So it makes things very difficult, especially if the system is aging and you're trying to trace out a leak, because opening more of the roof surface can actually lead to more damage. So being very cautious in cases like this, if the insulation is coming up with some of the membrane on it, is very important, and also ensuring that if this is happening, at the very least, temporary repairs are being put down just to ensure that's not going to cause any leak issues.
Okay, Kelly, sorry to interrupt again. Michelle, we do have another question. What is your recommendations how to repair the roof membrane around the, I butcher this word every time, the davit arm base?
As far as the base that connects into the membrane, it would depend on your membrane type. So it's just going to vary depending on each of it. I would say that you should, if you're having any issues around the davit arm base, you should contact professional roofers like Detail Roofing and get it inspected and provide recommendations.
Perfect. Thank you, Michelle.
Okay, so just to wrap up here, we want to talk about maximizing your roof system. So we've mentioned the word maintenance a few times throughout some of the questions that we got up front and throughout have specifically been about maintenance. So it's great to know that that is a word that everybody is familiar with, everybody's thinking about, because realistically, maintenance is required for the longevity of your roof system. Following a new roof installation, it is important to get a plan in place for routine inspections and maintenance for a variety of reasons. So not only is it going to expand the overall life of your roof system, especially upfront, it's going to be helpful in regards to manufacturer warranties. Most, not all, but most of the membrane manufacturers have stipulations within their warranties that maintenance does need to be completed in order for the warranty to be upheld. It's also the best way to identify issues early and deal with any small damage before it becomes major. And provides the biggest potential to identify leak issues before they happen. Completing regular inspections and maintenance, it's not foolproof. It's not going to eliminate all leaks at your building, no matter what the age of the system is. Unfortunately, there's no way to predict exactly when and where leaks are going to happen. However, regular inspections and maintenance, especially following major weather events, are just going to provide the best opportunity to maximize the roof system and get ahead of various leak issues. So I think, Andy, we have
Kelly,
our last poll.
Yeah, before we get into our poll, Michelle, I do have a very good question, something we do hear quite often. What
Yeah.
are the very basic things that the building superintendent can check on the roof on a regular basis before we call upon any contractor for preventative maintenance?
Yep, we get this a lot. First and foremost, I would say one of the most important things, if your superintendent is going on the roof, that he needs to stay far, far away from the edge of the roof. There's lots of tripping hazards on the roof. You're thinking you're staying within a safe distance. All it takes is a small trip and you can go over the roof edge. As well as, I wouldn't recommend him inspecting the roof or her inspecting the roof on their own. You should always have a secondary person up there. So the safety first, just because according to the MOH and IHSA and WSAB regulations, you must have working at heights in order to complete any roof work. Second, I'd say is that maybe they could just, if they see anything near the near mechanical room or near entrance point of the roof, if they see large areas of debris or vegetation, that's a good sign they should call a roofer. If they see any of the concerns that Kelly brought up about installation of penetrations or anything like that, missing vent caps, if they see birds or droppings from birds on the roof, and if they see any sort of exposed membrane within an inverted roof system.
Perfect. And as Kelly did mention, we do have one last poll question, so I will launch that. So for number 4, when did you last have your roof inspected by a professional roofing contractor? Not sure, I don't know. Within the last 6 months, very good. Never. Whoa, we gotta talk to you. Never. So I'm gonna end the poll. I'll share the results. So as you see, it's great to see that people are taking obviously precautions and getting their roofs inspected by professional contractors. So very good. So thank you for that.
You definitely want to get your roof inspected by a professional roof contractor at least once a year. Twice if you have a lot of vegetation or issues around your building.
Okay, so we are reaching the end of our hour, so we're gonna wrap up as quickly as possible here. Just for anybody that doesn't have the roof inspected regularly or has never had the roof inspected, it's important to think of your roof like a car. If you're investing in a new car, driving it off the lot, you're not going to just drive it for years and not doing anything. You want to be taking it in for regular maintenance and inspections just to ensure that it is going to stay in peak condition and you're going to be able to drive it for hundreds and thousands of kilometers. You can think of the roof in the same way. If you're not completing any maintenance or addressing any small issues as they come up, then realistically, the roof is not going to last you as long as it could and as long as it should. So overall, looking at various maintenance items, high level, what you want to be looking for are any signs of deterioration, any damages, whether they're weather related or man-made, and any vulnerability. So what that boils down to a lot is any waterproofing concerns, any hazards or safety concerns, or any drainage issues. A bit more of a comprehensive list here. Again, situations are going to depend on the building and roof type, but these are primarily the concerns that you would be looking for. And again, we are reaching the end of our hour, so I will just mention that for more information on specific maintenance items and what to look for, we will be holding a webinar on October 25th. That's called Preparing Your Roof for Winter Towers and Townhomes. That's going to go into a little more about the harsh realities of winter and how that can impact various roof systems and what specific maintenance items to look for in fall so that your roof can withstand the winter weather. So we will pop that link into the chat momentarily as well for anybody that hasn't registered, as well as include that in an email that's going out early next week with the recording of this webinar and any questions that we might not be able to get around to.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Kelly. Great job. Very informative. I hope everyone was able to get a lot of information out of this. As Kelly did
Yeah.
mention, it is time for questions and answers. If we aren't able to get to your question, we will definitely get to you, as Kelly mentioned, in an email. So feel
You're
free to
also
ask
feel
any
free-
questions.
Yeah, also feel free to email us at service@detailroof.ca if you want them any immediate questions or concerns.
Since it is 2 p.m., we don't want to take up too much time. So if anybody does have any additional questions, we can address those now or email them out afterwards.
Andy?
I think we are good. We're getting a lot of thank you. So again, thank you everyone for joining us. Again, hopefully we got a lot out of this, and we look forward to seeing everyone in a month at our next hosted webinar. So if anyone has any more questions, feel free. If not, we will end this and we will send the recording out to everyone within a week's time.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.